Hey Phil, this is Cameron.
Hey, what's up, Cam?
Man, I gotta talk to you about something. Have you been watching the news?
Dude, what is going on? Pocket politics with Phill and Cam. Why? Why are we doing this?
I think it's going to matter.
The only thing they want to talk about is guns and abortion.
My own views, I want to see the Republicans get away from the social issues.
I'm not saying that Republicans are idiots.
You hear something like that, it's powerful.
As an American, I was disgusted.
You could make the argument that you're probably more in the middle as well.
I think that's just a story that somebody's telling you.
Again, well, with the facts, this is true. Everybody knows
What
it.
facts?
So-
What facts? Who does this hurt more, Republicans or Democrats?
Boy, I've been thinking about that. Why now? Why are you suddenly on board with this?
Welcome back to Pocket Politics. Cameron, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Today we've got a lot of stuff. First, we're going to start with Trump, and more Trump this week.
And more Trump. We're also going to talk about some candidate quality, if you will. We've been talking about it a lot lately, and we're going to have some more.
More candidate quality issues, right? Brief about the Russian war and more mobilization against Ukraine.
Looks like Matt Gaetz is in the news a little bit again. We'll talk about him.
Yeah, unfortunately. Jenny Thomas is going to meet with the Jan 6, so we'll talk about that. And then a couple of races, Cam.
Looks like we've got Colorado's 3rd district. We've got a little discussion on the Kansas governor race, Nevada governor race. We're also going to talk a little bit about some Republicans, and they've got a new strategy going forward in the elections and some other good things. So why don't we get started, Phil?
Sounds
Tell us
good.
about Trump.
Well, so Trump did not have the greatest week. I feel like most times when we mention him lately, that's what we're saying, right? He's not having a great couple of days, not having a great couple of weeks.
I think he had a really rough week. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, his candidate for special master that got approved is now putting Trump's camp on their heels. I mean, they had an awful hearing the other day to stop the FBI from getting the 100 classified documents until the special master had reviewed them. The special master entered a deposition that basically asked a couple of the Trump camp, or asked a couple of questions of the Trump camp, said, hey, do the lawyers for Trump believe that he actually owns those documents? And the second question was, do you believe that that Trump has unclassified these documents? And they have not answered it, because if they answer it the way President Trump would answer it, they'll probably most likely get disbarred, right?
Yeah, that's what it's looking like. I mean, there's so much going on in the legal realm with Trump right now. I mean, I feel like this is just one of many, right? But no, I mean, certainly news coming out of there. I mean, the special masters, and there's a lot going into it, but yeah, he's definitely been hard at work, I guess. I mean, he's basically telling Trump also, like, you are saying there's planted evidence at Mar-a-Lago by the FBI. You need to produce it, and they haven't been able to produce anything. So
yeah, absolutely, and so the word is that hearing that happened the other day with Trump's lawyers went really bad for them. They weren't able to answer a lot of the questions, which they can't, because it jeopardizes their legal standing. And it could eventually put Trump in jail.
Yeah, I mean, it could, right? I mean, but again, there's just so many things going on with Trump right now. And I mean, the questions are, is this the one that sticks? Is this not the one that sticks? What comes of it? And I just think there's so much right now that it's hard to answer any one of those questions. I mean, I'd love to ask you, or you ask me, like, hey, what's going to be the outcome of this? But it's so hard to tell until we can let these things kind of play out.
Yeah, we really don't know. But the fact that Maine Justice is still keeping this, and they are going to be allowed to look at all these documents and move forward with it, and that appeal that they filed that went to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, it got smacked down by a 3-judge panel, 2 of which were Trump appointees.
Yep.
So it goes back to the point that while we talk about there are like corrupt justices and how bad this
Yeah.
Aileen Cannon, judge is, what do you think? I mean, this kind of shows that there's some good ones out there.
I think 90% of them are probably still good judges, good folks in the legal system. I mean, I throw 90% out, probably higher than that, honestly, right? You just said it. We hear about the extremes. We hear about the bad examples. Kind of like in anything, right? I mean, the bad apples.
Yeah, Amy Coney Barrett.
Well, and, I'm not going to go into that, but
I will. I mean, let's be real.
The bad apples the bad apples are the ones that oftentimes get the spotlight in any profession. But yes, I think most of these judges are out there still. Certainly taking their job seriously, and they're looking at these cases. And in this case, two of the three judges were Trump appointed, but they weren't going to bend, right? I mean, they ruled the way they felt it should be ruled. So,
yeah. Now, with that being said, we mentioned in the lead up, Trump. Well, here is the second one. So. We move on to the other thing. So Letitia James, or Tish James, as she's often referred to, basically filed a civil indictment. Now, granted, it's a civil case, so nobody's going to go to jail over this, but the repercussions are she's asking for a minimum of $250 million in payment back to state taxpayers, effectively, right? The state coffers. For tax fraud.
And let's not forget also she wants a permanent ban from him doing business in the state. That's tacked onto this also.
Oh, not just him, but...
Excuse me, his company, his family, yes.
His company, three of his adult children, right?
Exactly. So not just him, but his
three,
company, right?
Except for the only one that's not wrapped up in this indictment is, what's her name? It's the second oldest Trump daughter.
Yes, the one we don't hear much about.
Yeah, she's not, other than like partying during COVID in Miami. I think that's the only thing we heard about her.
Yeah, well, the other child, I guess Barron wasn't in it, but he's only like
but he's
14.
A kid.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But yes, his absolutely. Eric, Don Jr., right? They're all wrapped up in this.
And Ivanka.
Yeah.
So so you mentioned his company, the three adult children, but also his CFO. Could be out of a job permanently in New York, Alan Weisselberg, and there's a couple other people wrapped up in this. But like I said, they're asking for a minimum of $250 million to be paid back to the state for tax fraud.
Yep.
Cushman and Wakefield is wrapped up in this too. I don't know if you saw stuff about that. And then Mazars, the accounting firm, is they turned over all their stuff, and they're kind of free of the indictment. But only because they gave all their information up. Yeah,
I mean, you're actually hearing quite a bit of churn out of this one. At least I have been, right? This seems to be the one we're hearing a lot out of. I mean, there's a lot of headlines out about it and stuff. I mean, we talked a minute ago about it's hard to speculate on these, right? Because they're ongoing and there's so much out there. But
this one,
is this one that's going to get him?
It's not going to get him per se because he's not going to go to jail over this.
Right.
Now, the problem is this is a civil case, and he has already given testimony as well as his three adult kids and the other people wrapped up in this. And the problem is in a civil case, they can use pleading the fifth against against you. So I think he's in trouble with this one. I think he's in real hot water. She's trying to disband the Trump organization and take him to town. And not only that, but keep in mind, she wrapped all this stuff up before the indictment. It's been a 3-year-long investigation. She's been working on this thing for 3 years, got all this information, all these players. She's wrapped all this stuff up. And when she felt she was comfortable, not only did she bring the civil charges, but she referred it to the IRS, right? Because apparently she's convinced that there is tax fraud. And she referred it to the Justice Department, too. So this is one thing. This is a civil case that could result in further prosecution in New York with Alan Bragg, right? This could get him in trouble with the IRS, right? This could get him in trouble. I mean, this goes a long way, Cam.
Yeah, I mean, people can look at it, too, and say, well, Trump's in Florida now. Who cares if he's banned from New York or his company, I should say, from doing business in New York? But fact of the matter is, his company still does a lot of business in the state of New York. So,
and his kids do too.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean,
I'm when I say company, I'm kind of referring to the whole Trump, right? The kids and everything, right? But they're doing a lot of business up there, and so
I mean, they live in New York. They're on Fox News all the time.
Well, Donald Trump himself, the former president, is no longer living in New York. He's down in Florida now.
I
but his
agree.
kids, I think, are still living in New York.
That's what I'm saying. They are, and his company is in New York.
Well,
so.
and that's what I'm saying, right? I mean, yeah, he may be living down in Florida, but his company, their company, if you will, is still very active in New York State.
Yeah.
So, that could be huge if they cannot do business in the state of New York.
Absolutely. So I do think, of all the things that are going on surrounding the former president, this one has the ability to really stick it to him with some consequences. I mean,
it could. I mean,
and like I said, all these people, we know they went in and testified and pled the fifth, basically through the entire testimony, and that will hurt him. So, because that can absolutely be used against you
now
in a civil case.
It certainly could, yeah. I mean, again, we'll see how it plays out. But the other night, the former president was on with Sean Hannity and gave an interview. His first sit-down interview, if you will, since Mar-a-Lago happened. Did you happen to catch anything on that, Phil?
Yeah, I didn't see the whole interview because I refused to give Sean Hannity any serious viewing of mine.
He gets plenty of viewing.
Yeah, I know, but on principle, I will say that Trump is better off not giving interviews.
Well, I think many people would agree with you on that. I mean, I think many people close to him feel that way too. Like, it's best if we don't let him give an interview.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: who in the Trump camp allowed him to do this?
No idea.
I mean,
and I say that because, I mean, I don't, right? Every time Trump does one of these interviews and puts his foot in his mouth, for lack of better words, right? I mean, you sit and you wonder, like, who's letting him go out there?
Yeah.
But he loves to be the center of attention. He loves to be on stage. He loves to go on Hannity. He loves to go on any show that will have him. Right? Anytime he can get on TV.
I agree.
I'm not saying it's a good strategy. I'm just saying he loves to do it.
Yeah, but this goes back to his lawyers, right? Like, there was a talk a couple weeks ago that there's no credible lawyers left.
Well, I was getting ready to say, look at who his lawyers are these days.
Yeah, he's got one of his lawyers is registered as a foreign agent of Venezuela.
That's what I'm saying. Look at who his lawyers are. Like, do you think he's getting the best advice out there?
But surely they got to know. Like, do not let this guy go on national television.
I'm with you, but I think there's only so much you can do to control that guy. And I think at the end of the day, right, he's one of those people that you can sit and recommend this and say, hey, please don't go do that. But he's going to go do what he wants to do. And I think sometimes when people try and push him in a different direction, it just fuels him to go that other direction. And in this case, I think it fuels him to barge onto a television show, be it Hannity or whatever.
Yeah, and tell millions of Americans that you can declassify the most sensitive national security documents with your mind powers, right? I mean, because he's like, oh, I can declass them just by thinking about them. And then it sounds like he almost admits that he's taken them other places than Mar-a-Lago, because he specifically mentions Mar-a-Lago, and then he says, and other places.
Yeah. I mean, Sean Hannity was trying to press him, right? To be fair, Sean Hannity was trying to press him on, hey, please tell us how you declassified these documents, right? And I mean, I think that was kind of Hannity's thing. Hey, you know what? You're saying you're declassified. Tell the American people how you did it. I don't think Sean Hannity was expecting him to say that he declassified him with his mind, though. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I don't think Sean Hannity was expecting him to verge to walk the line of admitting guilt in certain crimes, which is nuts to me that he's like, the more this guy talks, the more he gets himself into trouble, and the more I don't think he understands that you can go into a courtroom and plead the fifth, and then they could just play that video and show that you're admitting guilt,
Yeah, well, he's not a lawyer, right? Trump is not a lawyer, and
He's not a very smart man either, apparently.
but he's shown us in the past, right, that he makes blunders and just kind of bulldozes his way on through them. Hannity has tried to advise him in the past, right? And I think Sean Hannity tries to help him out. But Phil, do you think Sean Hannity the other night ended that interview saying, "What did I just do"?
Maybe.
Thinking of it from his friendship with Trump, do you think he sat there like, "Ooh, that was maybe didn't go quite how I thought it should have went"?
Yeah, probably. But Sean Hannity's also got some reckoning of his own to do, right? I don't know if he's one of the people that's involved in that suit from the voting machine company Dominion.
I don't think he is, actually.
Okay.
Well, you don't quote me on that, but I don't think he is.
A large portion of the hosts at Fox are, right? I mean, there's several Fox hosts that are wrapped up in that. He may not be one of them. But look,
I could be wrong, though.
He's also under scrutiny from the January 6th committee, right? Because of the texts that were sent to Mark Meadows and et cetera.
I mean, he is, but I mean, nothing.
Not huge legal stuff, but he honestly still, like, even if you don't go to jail, like, there's still some reckoning to be had for Hannity. So he's probably disappointed that the president gave that speech the way he gave it. But I don't know. I
think he is, right? I mean, Sean Hannity, polarizing as he may be, right, remains to be a very popular person. I mean, his show is hugely popular. Right? It continuously is the number one show during that time slot, the 9 p.m. Eastern time slot that he holds down. I mean, he continues to get viewers and listeners to his radio program. So he is very popular. Do I think he's in a do I think he's in a great deal of trouble? I mean, yeah, he's been questioning some things, but I do. I think Hannity is trying to help Trump out. I think he's tried to do it in the past. I think he's trying to help him out. And my 2 cents is the other night cameras are off, and all that stuff. He was probably like, "Whoa, what did I just do?" But now on the flip side, Sean Hannity has been he's been in this business for many years now. He's gotta himself think what's going to happen when I interview this guy. Don't you think? I mean, Hannity's no dummy. He's got to know, like, look, what kind of box am I going to open tonight?
Yeah, I'm sure he feels a certain way about it. It just blows me away that at this point he's like, I mean, at some point you would think Trump just has to know better, regardless of what his lawyers say, regardless of what
you would think, but I don't know that he does. I mean, he hasn't shown us that.
Yeah.
I agree with you, right? You would think, but doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah. Now, again, do his sycophants turn on him for this? Probably not.
No,
I mean, they're still showing up to rallies,
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the Trump faithful, if you will, no. They're not even paying attention to this stuff.
Yeah, they don't even like Fox News anymore anyway, right? They've moved on to like One America or Newsmax or one of those other...
Didn't One America go under or starting to go... Oh, no, they lost their biggest... Verizon, I think, or shut them off or turned them off their platform. One America is in some... One America News, OAN, they're in some financial trouble. Anyway, now I'm getting off on a sidetrack. But no, going back to your question, I don't think Hannity's... I'm sorry. I don't think Trump's fans are turning on him. I guess the question, though, is from a political standpoint, how politicians feel about it. Now, do we see Republicans falling out of the Trump camp? Some indication some of that has happened, but certainly not a mass exodus yet. But, Phil, do these things, right? And when I say things like the stuff with this, the lawsuits, the civil lawsuits, et cetera, the Hannity interview the other night, the stuff now with the special master and all the Mar-a-Lago drama and stuff. Are we going to slowly see Republican politicians bail on him?
Yes, I think we are, and I think we're starting to see it too because, a couple weeks ago, Mitch McConnell's statements about... And he's basically referring to MAGA Trump-endorsed candidates being of a certain quality. I think that is a signal that people are starting to realize they need to distance themselves from what is going on here. But
I was just gonna. I'm sorry, Phil. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Good.
I was just gonna say, you've heard me say on the podcast though before that I think Mitch McConnell, in private beats his head on the wall, right? Every time there's something with Trump going on, I think he'd flush him from the party immediately if he could. Do you agree with me on that, Phil?
Like the records, like the documents.
Well, but
flush them.
Yeah, you like how I went there, right?
Yeah.
But do you agree with me on that, Phil? That Mitch McConnell would love nothing more than to just get him out of the party?
Well, I think a lot of them would. I mean, I think we're going to see more separation from this. Now, speaking of those questionable candidates, it turns out we keep having problems, right? I mean. Did you hear the clip of the football player in Georgia? Herschel Walker. Yeah, did you hear the clip of him talking about his upcoming debate? Saying that, that guy's probably gonna,
yeah,
I'm probably gonna get beat up pretty bad because I'm not a very smart guy.
Yeah, he just said, but I mean, Herschel Walker was trying to play the sympathy card with that too. Like, oh, guys, you know me, I'm just kind of not a real smart, polished guy. I'm just I don't think he said dummy. I forget what he said.
You can say it like that, but I don't think that he's trying to play the sympathy card. I think he's worried and he knows, and he's just trying to be realistic.
But I will say in Georgia, I don't think it matters. Herschel Walker, all indications are, is going to win this race. Warnock, while he was doing well at one point, I think he's slipping in the polls. I think Georgia is a state where Republicans are going to flip a seat in the Senate. Not all of them, mind you, but I think Georgia is one they will. Herschel Walker said some outlandish things. I don't know that it matters what he says, honestly. I think the voters in Georgia have made up their mind. I think they want to put him in. Does he look good? Is the debate going to look good? No, I'm not. I'm certainly not saying that. I don't think the man is going to debate very well at all. We've heard him attempt to discuss policy in the past, and usually when he attempts that, it doesn't go over very well. So I can't see him do well in a debate stage. Now, we've talked about before, supposedly there are people from the Republican, National Committee or whatever gone down to Georgia and tried to polish him up for a debate. I don't know how much polishing you can do there, though. I mean, there's only so much I should say that I think you can do. I just don't see that mattering much. I think the debate is in mid-October. October 14th comes to mind. Yeah, I think a lot of people want to watch that, but again, I don't think it really matters what he says that night. I think the voters in Georgia have made their mind up.
Yeah, okay.
But in Ohio now...
Yeah, this J.R. Majewski that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, it came out, Thursday? AP News reported that while he said that he was a combat veteran and deployed to Afghanistan, his military record basically shows that that's not the case.
Yeah, he had said something to the effect of, I was over there in the midst of the war and out in a tent living and, didn't get a shower for 40 some days.
And in combat.
Like that. He's in a tent in combat, whatever, trying to make that up when in actuality, his records do not show that.
Yeah, so it turns out he didn't really go to Afghanistan. He may have flown in for, a small period of time, but he is not a combat veteran. He was deployed to an Air Force base in Qatar.
Yeah. I think you just said it. He very well may have flown missions over and through there and possibly landed, but I think the bulk of his time, it looks like, was in the rear, if you will, and I say rear, way, way back in the rear.
It's like the equivalent of me saying I'm a combat veteran who fought in both Iraq and Afghanistan because I was underwater in the Middle East. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It holds no...
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It's something that he didn't even need to say, right? I mean, all this guy needed to say was, I was an Air Force veteran. He could have just simply said that, and people would have given him certainly props for that. I don't know why he went down this direction that he did, but it seems to be in character with what this guy has done.
Well, and a lot of some of the other kind of hard-right MAGA-style candidates. I will say
certainly not all Republicans.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If he can exaggerate on this, what's to stop? When do we start thinking that maybe he's not he's exaggerating when he said, I was just at the protest at the Capitol on January 6th. Not, you know what I mean? It's only a matter of time before somebody finds a video of what he was actually doing, right? Because there was so much video being taken that day.
Oh, there is, and people are combing through videos looking for some of these folks, like, hey, this person's running for office, and they said they were only at the protests, but you know what? What do the cameras show us? There are people looking at those for some of these candidates, Majewski no doubt being one of them. But again, though, going back to the quality candidate, this is a race, okay? This district in Ohio, it traditionally had been a Democratic seat, and then redistricting comes around, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent, it happens. And this race looked like this is going to be a Republican seat. Looks like they're going to easily flip it. They had a couple of candidates that were out there running in the primary that, for lack of better words, were Mark 1 Mod 0 Republicans, my Navy friends.
I like that.
Yeah,
that
I was going to say,
yeah.
the Navy people listening will get that reference. But standard bearer Republicans, people like Rob Portmans and Mitt Romneys, right? Just good old-fashioned GOP Republicans. They're running. They're in the primary. Hey, pick one of them. March them on into victory. Here you go. Here's a seat.
And
that was
this
fine.
guy now, but this guy is in hot water now.
But going back, that's what it looked like. And then all of a sudden, here comes Majewski. Boom, here you go. Drop him in the mix. Suddenly, he wins the primary. And now, right, the Republicans' shot at taking that seat seem to be dwindling. Candidate quality. This is a guy who they say has, basically been into conspiracy theories for much of his life. He, at one point, painted a giant shroud not shroud, but turned his lawn into like a giant Trump banner by painting his lawn into some Trump sign. It was kind of bizarre.
I mean, that's normal, right?
I see him all the time, I guess, driving around. So, but yeah, so I mean, he's got all this stuff. He's again, we go back to this candidate quality. He's not a great one. And from what I'm hearing now, and from what reports are, is that the Republicans are ready to abandon this guy. Hey, you know what? Funding, pull it out of there. We can spend it somewhere else. And so here you go. Here's a seat that certainly looked a few months ago like it was going to be a Republican seat or flip to a Republican seat. Now, very well may not, especially with the Republicans pulling away. Phill, does Majewski go down the drains now?
I think this one is going to be a wash. Yeah, I think this district is going to go Democratic. Again, I could be wrong. It's subject to redistricting, like you said, but I think that one's kind of lost. I mean, if they did talk about it, I think they're already pulling money out too.
No, they are. That's what I'm saying. They basically have abandoned him.
Not just that they talked about it, but that they're already actually pulling the money out.
Yeah.
And so I think he's in serious trouble. But this is a good example of this strategy that the Democrats are using might actually be working. I mean,
well,
I'll give you, on a macro level, we don't necessarily know if it's a good strategy, but if you look at this specific race, that has definitely worked. At least as of right now. We'll see how the election goes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally. I don't think it's a good strategy. Again, you and I kind of debated this a couple weeks ago, so I don't want to rehash all that. But time will tell on that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going back to that. But Majewski, no need to lie. You didn't need to do all this stuff. And by the way, I will say this: in the dictionary under January 6th rioters, I think there's just a giant picture of J.R. Majewski. Have you seen this guy? I mean, doesn't he look like somebody that was rioting at the Capitol?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the big beard and it just
scowl on his face. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a picture of him smiling. Have you?
No, but he does kind of. But again, I don't want to label everybody that has beards or associate that. I just think that he does kind of fit the profile of what we saw from the video and everything.
Well, yeah, and I probably shouldn't have just said what I did, but he just sort of looks like a stereotypical rioter from that day. I will say though, I want to be clear. This candidate quality is certainly not all Republicans. Democrats have had some issues with candidate quality, too. A couple weeks ago, we talked about that Crystal Matthews making racist comments down there in South Carolina. I mean, I think for both parties, right, I get it. There's a lot of work to do. You can't screen everybody, but you know what? This just goes to show you for both parties. do a better job at screening candidates.
Absolutely.
And flushing them out in the primaries.
Yeah. Now, shifting gears a little bit, did you see this week? Vladimir Putin came out and said they're mobilizing 300,000 reservists to go fight the war that they are doing a despicable job of in Ukraine. I mean, they've been pushed back.
7 months now, this thing's gone on, and Putin, I think, thought he'd have it done in 3 days.
We thought he would have Kiev in 3 days, and now he has less of Ukraine than he had when he started the war.
That's what I'm saying, and it's drug on for 7 months.
Yeah, and they've had hundreds, or maybe not hundreds of thousands, but they've got to be up there. I mean,
are you talking about like in their
like casualties? Yeah, I mean,
it's got to be a high number. I guess I haven't really.
I mean, I remember hearing probably over a month ago that it was like 30,000 at that point, and that's just what they speculate because Russia won't tell anybody.
Russia not being truthful, say it isn't so.
Right? So, but as a result of this announcement for mobilizing reservists, initially like plane tickets out of the country started flying out, or started selling out. Now the prices have skyrocketed because there's such high demand. I read a report, I think on Thursday or Friday, that said that like on one of the roads that was going into Georgia from Russia, there was like a 16-mile backup of cars of people trying to leave Russia.
Yeah, I saw something similar. Phil, I just wanted to throw this in there. As of August 24th, so about a month ago, as many as 25,000 Russians were said to have been killed in the war. Again, that's a month ago, so who knows how many have died since then. And about 9,000 Ukrainians at that point. So, I mean, clearly Russia is taking, much higher losses than the Ukrainians are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to throw that out there since we were talking about the casualty numbers. So, I mean, they've already, 25,000, throw probably, another couple thousand the last month in there. I mean, they're probably pushing 30,000 casualties, deaths coming out of this war so far.
Absolutely.
In 7 months. And you talked about the line. I heard the other day that a plane ticket to get out of Russia, if you can get one, if you can get one, good luck. But a ticket was going to run you about $8,700, whereas that same ticket a few weeks ago was like $300.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
and it has 16-mile traffic backup to get into Georgia.
Yeah.
Like, and keep in mind, like, while it may not be all that desirable to live in Russia all the time, like, it's got to be less desirable to live in Georgia. I mean, they're like a former Soviet country that has
never really gotten on its feet, I don't think, since the
they've
Soviet
never really
Empire
gotten
fell.
under, like, they've never really gotten out from under the thumb of Russia. I mean, 2012, I think they were attacked by Russians in kind of the similar way that Russia's doing to Ukraine.
Well, that's why I say
and that Russia had done to Afghanistan as well.
Yeah, they never really. Well, that's why I say they never really got their feet under them when the Soviet Empire fell.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that we're not even talking about. There was like a mass exodus of people trying to get into Finland, and keep in mind it's like Finland and Turkey are the only two non-former Soviet states that they can get into. Because most countries, you require Russians to have special visas and require things because you think, this makes me wonder, if that wasn't the case, we would potentially have a refugee crisis on our hands of Russians fleeing into Western Europe, right?
Potentially, yeah.
I mean, they, because Russia borders Poland and borders Belarus and borders, Ukraine and all these other countries. And, they would be fleeing these countries,
Yeah. I mean, it is, well, and that's why a plane ticket to someplace like Finland is $8,700 right now.
Yeah.
And again, if you can even get one. I mean, can you imagine, even if you had $8,500, say $9,000 to drop on a plane ticket, what are the odds if you were a young male in Russia right now, you could even get that ticket?
Exactly. Well, that and keep in mind it's a ticket to Uzbekistan.
Well, yeah. Let me spend $8,000 on a ticket to a place that is probably not a real desirable place to go to.
Yeah.
But that's how badly some of these people want out of Russia right now.
Yeah.
So what does Putin do going forward?
Well, I mean, there was one of his diplomats gave an interview to the BBC the other day and basically said that, their actions are causing the actions of like the United Kingdom and the United States and Ukraine and other European countries are putting them at a risk of nuclear war with Russia. So, does he do it? I mean, he's certainly unhinged enough to do it. I mean,
yeah, and there's supposedly talk or at least from what I've heard that Putin's got health problems. Right? There's some discussion that he's got cancer, from what I've heard, which may actually explain some of his actions. Right? If he's sitting there terminally ill and saying, "Well, I might as well try and accomplish everything that I wanted to do right now," and before I pass away or whatever. Now, I'm not sitting here saying he's passing away or that even for certain that he's got cancer. I've just heard that he perhaps does, right? So if he's sitting there terminally ill, it makes you wonder what he would do.
Yeah, who knows? But we shall see.
I was going to say, though, how long do you think this drags out? Overall, this Russia-Ukraine war. Just curious your thoughts on how long it drags out.
Oh, I thought it would last like a month, maybe two. So I don't think any prediction of mine would be credible at this point. I mean, who knows? I mean, we're like almost
we're 7 months in.
We're coming up to a year of conflict. Yeah. So, I mean, think about it like this: how long was Russia involved in Afghanistan?
A decade.
So, I mean,
well, and that's what I'm saying. This thing could go on for years, right?
Yeah. Now, granted, that wasn't Vladimir Putin, but they were in Afghanistan for 10 years, and Afghanistan didn't have the capability to fight back. They didn't have the capability or the support that Ukraine has. You know.
Well, yeah. I was just curious your take. I think it's going to drag out for a long time as well. I do want to shift gears though a minute here, Phil, and talk about Matt Gaetz. He's in the headlines again, and
for not the greatest, in my opinion, reasons. It looks like the Justice Department is signaling that they are not going to bring charges against him for this 17-year-old or this sex crimes involving the 17-year-old, mainly because of witness credibility. Basically, they said his associate, who is like one of the big witnesses in this, has commonly in the past accused others of sex crimes to get out of where he was at, and then the 17-year-old herself that's involved in the case. I think she's not 17 anymore, but she was when the alleged human trafficking / sexual assaults, whatever he was alleged to have done. I guess she's got some credibility issues too, so it does not look at the current state with the evidence and the witnesses that they have that he is going to get indicted. Your thoughts?
No, I agree. I mean, he's caught up in this whole sex scandal thing, like you said, but I looks like it's dropped. I think he'll move on. I think he'll get reelected here this fall in his election. And I think we'll continue to hear about Matt Gaetz, right?
Yeah.
And I say hear about, not with this anymore. If it's dropped, right? I mean,
it's easy to hear about somebody when they do a podcast for a living.
Well, which
that's effectively what he does. I mean,
we like to think he does a little more, but yeah. Anyway, I think there's probably this will continue to be in the news, but I think it's going to get dropped. I think Gaetz will just go back to being the Matt Gaetz that we've all known.
Yeah, so actually I don't know that they're dropping, because I don't think they've said they were going to drop the case. I think they just said they're signaling that they're not ready and don't have enough to bring an indictment.
Oh, I thought it was a drop, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it's more that the prosecutors in charge of this, the we're told by Maine Justice, the Justice Department, heads that they don't feel that they're ready to bring the case.
Okay. Well, we'll see how that one plays out. The January 6th committee, though, is back this week. September 28th, they're going to have a hearing. It's going to be an afternoon hearing, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Looks like Ginny Thomas has agreed to speak with him, so I think we'll be hearing about that. And also, supposedly they're going to cover some new evidence with Mike Pence in this one.
Yeah, so I mean, the Ginny Thomas thing is really the big news. How do you think that turns out? I mean,
it's hard to say on that one. It really is. Just because, right? I mean, we don't know what she's going to say. I just...
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
That's what I mean.
With Ginny Thomas. So.
That's what I mean. So I really have a hard time. I'm not answering that. I'm not trying to push it off, but I just feel I have a hard time answering that. I think we need to wait and see what comes out of that as to what she's gonna say or not gonna say.
Yeah, I see this as being very similar to. I see this as being very similar to some of the hearing clips that we've already seen, where they just basically say, "I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth." I don't think she's gonna be willing to answer any really tough questions from the committee.
Yeah, I mean, likely, but I guess we'll find out. What about the new evidence on Pence? Any idea what that may be?
No, but I have a hard time thinking that it's evidence that Pence directly had wrongdoing, right? Because I think through this we've kind of seen that he made a lot of really good decisions. But I think it may be evidence surrounding kind of, it's like, are we going to find out that there was nefarious action by the Secret Service? Because we also know we're probably going to hear some more Secret Service stuff in the next couple of weeks, right? Or the next however many hearings we get. And they haven't really talked about that. But I have read some articles that said that the January 6th committee is getting troves of information. So who knows if all these things are related. Now, do we find out that the Pence information and the Ginny Thomas information is all related? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Do we find out that the Secret Service information is wrapped up in this stuff too? I don't know, but they're having the live hearing, which means that they've already put together something, and guess what? We're still getting more. So
yeah, I mean, I've heard this could be their last hearing. But I haven't heard officially that it's going to be their last.
I've heard speculation saying there was at least we were to expect like 3 more or as much as 3 more. Again, we don't really know. This is the only one that's been scheduled or announced. So we shall see.
Yeah, well, it's coming up here this week, September 28th. So
all right,
everybody can check it out.
Well, you want to get into some races?
Yeah, but before we do that, I just wanted to touch on the Republicans have got their new strategy, if you will. And I say new, it's kind of a dusting off of the old Newt Gingrich plan from back in 1994, his contract with America.
Yeah, and this is only one of the tents in the Republican Party, right?
Well, supposed to be their new plan. Now, is it... Well, let's just go with what the Republicans are saying, right? As far as what tent, etc. Let's just go with what the plan is here. They've got 4 pillars to it: economy, safety, individual freedom, government accountability. Now, I will tell you, Gingrich's plan back in 94, his contract with America, very popular. And I think what the Republicans want to do here is let's harken back to those old times. And I will tell you, a lot of Republicans will look at this, or independents for that matter, maybe even moderate Democrats, and look at it and say things like economy matter, right? We all know that. People are into the economy. Certainly safety, right? Accountability, all that kind of stuff, right? Stuff that in theory, at least, is going to resonate with voters and things that can make Republicans excited. Of interest, though, there were a couple of things that...
What were the last 2 you said? Government accountability and what?
Individual freedom.
Oh, I'm choking on the irony.
Well... I figured you would on that.
Yeah, government accountability and individual freedom. Like, oh, geez.
Well, this is, again, these are...
Come on, Republicans.
These are things that the Republican Party wants to get back to, right? They do. Now...
I'm dabbling in this whole individual freedom thing while I try and pass a nationwide abortion bill.
They're saying, though, that... Well, they're saying that they're back to supporting tax cuts, want to get down on government spending, things that... Those are things that make me excited. Interestingly
Yeah, but
enough,
those
though,
tax cuts aren't going to apply to you, Cam.
now, these tax cuts will apply to all. Right?
Those tax cuts, no, they don't, because in 2016 or 2017, when they passed the last set of tax cuts, it actually made both your and my taxes go up.
I've done very well under Republicans. So I will say this, though. What the Republicans have...
Have you? How?
I've done well under Republicans.
But-
a lot of people have.
But here's the thing. We're both in the military, right? We have like we have great job security.
But let's take this back to what I was getting at with this plan. They've got a lot of good things on the surface that are going to excite Republicans and independents, but here's what's interesting. What they seem to not be talking about and actually seem to be running away from is abortion, as you mentioned it a little bit ago, and the election denialism. It's almost as if they want to push that off and not even talk about it. So that was kind of interesting how that all came about. You talked about the personal freedom, and yet Lindsey Graham is touting a nationwide abortion ban. Some other Republicans are jumping in on it, saying, "Yeah, we want in on it."
Government accountability sounds great. When the last, the last Republican president probably broke more laws than anybody in recent time.
But this goes back to what I think a lot of the old class Republicans, if you will, they want to get to this. They want to get back to the days of Newt Gingrich and his contract with America, and working when they worked with Clinton and all this kind of stuff, and things were going well, and Newt Gingrich helped usher in this giant red wave that brought in young congressmen like Joe Scarborough and some of these other ones, right, into the party and into the fold, and it's interesting going forward to see.
I love that you just told me how good we were doing, how good we do under Republicans, and then you said back to the days when Newt Gingrich is working with a Democratic president to get shit done.
And he did.
I know
But
that was in a Democratic administration.
Yeah, and Clinton will tell you and Clinton will say, "Hey, I wouldn't have got anywhere without the Republicans helping me."
Well, I mean that's probably not true, because for the first, first couple of years of his administration, he
gives an awful lot of credit to the Republicans.
I agree, but I'm just saying there was a good majority of time, or a good portion of time, where Clinton was able to get stuff done with a Democratic-led House and a Democratic-led Senate.
But let's go back to back into this, though. Is this something that is going to help the Republicans, this message? Is it going to help them with independence in the upcoming midterms?
No, not in the upcoming midterms.
You don't think so?
Nope.
You don't think economy and safety is going to resonate with independence?
I think where they sit now is going to be where they're at in the general election in November, or worse.
Okay. Well, I think it's going to bring some energy to independence, perhaps if they can message it well. But I will say this. They are going to have to answer the mail on some of these social issues that they have let out of the box. And that really may be what hinders them and holds them back this fall, when all indications are it should be a good year for them.
Yeah, and I don't think coming out and announcing like, oh, our four pillars and and personal freedoms right after, like literally a week after Lindsey Graham says, no, it's not up to states' rights. This is just an American issue. There should be a national abortion ban.
Well, I think some of this is that Republicans are doing damage control. They're trying to get a message out there to try and get them, make some headway in the upcoming elections.
You know what they need to do damage control for? Is this disastrous debate that happened this week in Colorado.
Yeah, I was getting ready to go there. So speaking of elections, Colorado's 3rd District, Lauren Boebert versus Adam Frisch. And this debate that you're referring to that just happened, Miss Boebert starts out, before the debate even begins, by attacking her moderator. Did you see that, Phil?
Yeah, and getting booed, right? So the debate hadn't even started, and she's getting booed for attacking the moderator. I mean, and her opponent looks elated. I mean, he's having like the time of his life, just standing there laughing.
You and I probably would be laughing also if we were running against her, right? I mean,
yeah.
So let's talk about her opponent a little bit. Adam Frisch, he was a number of years, he was on the Aspen, Colorado City Council. He has said he's very bipartisan, right? He said, in fact, I think he said he wasn't even officially a Democrat until December. So he's been an independent for a long time. like I said, promises to be very bipartisan if elected. And he says that he is running what he calls the pro-normal coalition. He calls out Ms. Boebert a lot, for her, dare we say, antics that she's done.
Yeah.
And so he's now dubbing his team as the pro-normal coalition.
It's funny that when we have these discussions over bad candidates, we don't really talk about her because she's an incumbent, but she is effectively a bad candidate. I mean,
well, let's be fair though. She is an incumbent. She has won before, right? So
wait, she ran before in a different district, effectively, because her district has been changed. She also ran before people really knew who she was. You know what I mean?
So those could be things that hurt her coming up. I think the other thing, though, is this Frisch wants to be very much a moderate. Colorado seems to, for the most part, like moderate candidates. I mean, we've talked about O'Day getting his traction there, being a moderate Republican. So he's trying to kind of do something similar and say, hey, look, put me in. I'm going to stand up for normalcy. I want to work with both sides of the aisle. I saw in an interview where he's called out certain Democratic things he disagreed with, right? Things they put forward. He's not a fan of the whole student loan forgiveness thing, and there were some other things that he's called out. And maybe he's just trying to sell himself to the moderates. I don't know, but Miss Boebert, right? You mentioned the redistricting. She's got to deal with that now. Adam Frisch has potential to actually beat her this fall. And so I think it's a race that has kind of quietly been going under the radar. I mean, well, let me back up. I don't think Lauren Boebert ever runs under the radar. She's always out there and bombastic. I saw, though, polls have it about a 7-point difference right now. Boebert with a 7-point lead, which may sound like a lot. But I also saw a poll that shows she's underwater with her constituents. And so, how many people turn up on midterm day to vote? And how much has Frisch motivated them?
I mean, if her constituents were in the audience for that debate, it doesn't sound good.
No, I mean, you mentioned she was getting booed and heckled during the debate.
She's getting laughed at during the debate,
Well, she basically had one answer to questions during the debate.
Yeah, which was Nancy
Pelosi. I mean, they were asking her about, I don't know, water use in Colorado, and she's like talking about Nancy Pelosi. So much so that her opponent said, my name is Adam Frisch. I am not Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
He wanted to stress that point. That was her default thing here. Phil, does this Adam Frisch have a shot out there this fall?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the district's changed, so we don't really know exactly how it looks going forward. Again, like you said, that last poll had her up by 7 points. However, it won. It's not a very highly rated poll. And two, I mean, there's not a lot of data out there still. So
a lot of these House races don't have a lot of polling data for us to look at. Not like, say, the governor races and, say, the Senate races and stuff. So that's why some of these House races are a mystery.
That's the other thing. You know when that poll was conducted, right? That poll was from July.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. There's not a lot of data out there, so we don't know exactly where this Frisch is. I mean, the debate certainly didn't hurt him the other night. If anything, he looked very composed through the whole thing, and quite honestly, seemed to be giving pretty standard answers.
Yeah, he did a good job, and she clearly didn't. But we talked a little bit about the quality of polls, before we got on the pod, and it needs to be said that not only is there not a lot of data, but the data that is out there in these House races are also fairly low quality polls.
Yeah.
And so, I think we mentioned it last week that like a C rating for 538 is kind of like an F if you were going to give it an overall grade.
Yeah.
And a B rating looks more like a C if it was your report card.
Really, I was just throwing a number out there of what I could find, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So it's low quality polling and not a lot of it.
Yeah, and so you think her opponent's got a shot? You think this Frisch has a shot this fall?
I think he wins it. Yeah, I have no doubt. I mean that if people in Colorado are watching that debate, and if people in that district are watching that debate, and it made the local news.
Oh yeah, it definitely did.
Right,
yeah.
and lots of people, even though we talk about the issues with the media and stuff like this, lots of people still watch their local news because they want to know what's going on in their communities.
Yeah, and I think one thing, again, that I think may help Frisch is he's trying to run right down the middle. Mm-hmm. He's not trying to get far to the left.
Yeah.
He's just trying to run right down the middle.
And that's really easy to do and get away with in a state like Colorado, where it's traditionally blue, but it's not like real radical blue. It's just, it's like things that like most people actually want, like access to women's health care.
Yeah.
And legalize marijuana, that they can take all that money and put it into schools.
Well, in the state,
and good education systems, and so it's a really easy state for somebody that's a moderate.
It is. It's an
win.
interesting state. I mean, there certainly is a liberal movements in places like Denver and Colorado Springs, but when you get out of it into the plains, onto the plains and
Fort Collins
the west slopes and stuff, you do get a lot more red, and that's where I think. I think his running to the middle and trying to call himself again a normal candidate, I think that can bode well for him this fall. The big thing I think he's got to work on though is his name recognition and getting it out there, because Lauren Boebert gets so much media attention. Everyone knows who she is. The real thing is, do voters in Colorado know Mr. Frisch? And that I think may be a factor come this fall. So we'll see. But speaking of races, I do want to look at a couple more. Phil, let's go to your home state of Kansas in the governor race. Lauren Kelly versus Derek Schmidt.
Yeah, so Laura Kelly, she's running against the Secretary of State. I think he's the Secretary of State.
Attorney General.
Attorney General. That was it. So she's running against him. I think at this point, her popularity is only increasing. I mean, they had this referendum, and and she's a Democratic candidate. It honestly, as surprising as it is, I think we're going to have another Democratic governor for 4 more years. I mean, the polls are close.
They are.
But most of the polls that are out there have her winning.
The last poll I saw had Kelly at 45%, Schmidt at 43%. Now, to be fair, that really is in the margin of error.
And again, though, the polling aggregate has her up by like 3 or 4 points.
Yeah, which still kind of borders on that margin of error. But yeah, certainly she's got, I guess if you will, she's got the polls in her favor. But 8% of voters say they're undecided, so that could be a factor, right? Which way they break. But here is a stat for you. Independents do favor Kelly. So independents that have been polled favor her 46% to 30% for Schmidt. So it looks like she's got the independent vote, or at least a chunk of it.
Yeah, and you know what? November 8th rolls around. Who knows? I mean, we've been shocked by turnout and the votes in Kansas already once this year. I wouldn't be surprised if we're shocked again.
Yeah, Kansas certainly did shock us. Let's look at another governor's race. Let's go west to Nevada. Steve Sisolak, the Democrat incumbent, is squaring off against, I should say, Joe Lombardo. Politico has this one as a toss-up. Gives the Democrats an edge in their fundraising, though. The polls, September 17th through 20th poll from Trafalgar has Lombardo up 48% to 45%. September 14th to 19th, Data for Progress poll has Lombardo and Sisolak even at 45%, and another one from Emerson College from earlier in September has them even at 40%. So this one looks like it's a tight race.
Yeah, and it's closed too, so it is getting tighter. Now, I don't know a lot about politics in Nevada. I just know it is a very purple state. It kind of goes either way.
I think places like Las Vegas and Reno certainly bring maybe more of a blue tinge to the state, whereas again, if you get out into the more rural areas in Nevada, right, it trends more red. Here's the thing, though: the rural areas in Nevada have a very low population base.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever driven out into like the outskirts of past Las Vegas out into remote parts of Nevada?
Oh,
There's nothing out there.
I've been to I've been out to Fallon
That's
before.
True, yeah. I mean, okay, around Fallon, was there much?
There's not. There's hardly anything out there.
Yeah,
it's essentially like Death Valley.
Yeah. So Nevada. I think you're right, though. It is a purple state overall when you balance all that together. This is a race that I've been hearing some about, really really close to our listeners. Keep an eye on that. Certainly keep an eye on that. But you know what? Talking about these races and talking about all that we have really gotten us through this last hour or so here, Phil. Before we sign off, how about a little plug for our social media and our website?
Yeah, absolutely. Come engage with us on Facebook, on Instagram, Phill and Cam, or Pocket Politics with Phill and Cam on Facebook, and P Squared with Phill and Cam on Instagram, and then also our website has links to all of those, pocketpolitics.co.
Okay. Well, it's time for our parting shots, and I'm going to kick this one off here with my parting shot today. Let's go to the state of Iowa. A QAnon believer by the name of Doug Jensen, who is from Iowa, he has been found guilty on all 7 charges for his Capitol rioting on the day of January 6th. Of note, though, Mr. Jensen thought he was storming the White House and insisted that he was storming the White House, not realizing that they were bursting into the Capitol. Mr. Jensen, I will say this: if you're going to riot, you probably should at least know where it is that you're rioting or where you're entering. Speaking of entering, he was one of the first 10 to bust into the Capitol, and he was on pretrial custody, or he has been on pretrial custody since last July. Now, initially, he was on like some type of house arrest, but he was detained after he violated conditions. And guess how he violated these conditions, Phil?
How is that?
He was live streaming an event hosted by Mike Lindell.
Nice.
And so the judge found that as in violation of his house arrest thing and put him on into custody, where he's been. Now he just got found guilty, 7 charges. Again, this is the man who thought he didn't even know where it was he was rioting at. He is going to be sentenced in December. So, yeah, again, if you're going to riot, at least know where you're rioting at. Phil, over to you for your parting shot.
Yeah, my parting shot is the Dimorphos dart. I'm guessing a lot of people haven't heard about this. I just read this, but apparently NASA has launched this rocket.
The Dimorphos dart.
Yeah, well, they call it the DART, which stands for the Double Asteroid Redirection Test.
Okay, yeah.
And Dimorphos is this rock that's like, smaller than our moon, but like still pretty big. And it's gonna like fly into the asteroid belt that it lies in between Mars and Jupiter and ram Dimorphos, this giant rock, at a speed of almost 18,000 miles per hour. 1,800 miles per hour, I think. But either way, this crazy story, and this is kind of our way of testing, can NASA divert like a doomsday asteroid in the future? Pretty wild, but that's what I've got for the parting shot this week. So if you're interested in stuff like that, certainly look it up. Kind of a cool story. But other than that, that's all I've got, Cam.
Well, it's been fun again this week. About time to wrap it up. Phil, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Cam.
All right, until next time.
Bye.